Welcome to the part 3 of the COBIT Foundation training. I'll be looking at COBIT principles and components of a governance system. COBIT principles is a very important topic in COBIT Foundation. And in COBIT, you should know that there are two sets of principles. Number one, principles that describe the core requirements of a governance system for enterprise information and technologies. The number two, principles for a governance framework that can be used to build a governance system for the enterprise. So these are the two sets of principles that we have in COBIT. And of course, the examination questions would be set to know whether you can distinguish between the two of them. So looking at the principles for a governance system. If you want to build a governance system for your organizations, all right, COBIT says there are 6 principles you should consider. Number one, each enterprise needs a governance system to satisfy stakeholder needs and to generate value from the use of I&T. All right. Value reflects a balance among benefits, risk, and resources. An enterprise needs an actionable strategy and governance system to realize these values. So whatever governance system you are going to set up must be able to create value for your organization. All right, your enterprise objectives must be aided by your governance system. So there is no use having a governance system that will not take you to the promised land. Remember we said a business is basically existing to meet stakeholders' needs. Every business, all right, has stakeholders that determines what they want. So whatever governance system we're going to put in place must be able to help us to be able to create value. And please take notes, value is a balance among benefit realization, being able to get the value required, risk optimization, being able to preserve the value you have created, and resource optimization, right? Resource effectiveness and resource efficiency. Okay. Then number two, a governance system for enterprise I&T is built from a number of components that can be of different types and that work together in a holistic way. So holistic approach is what we use when we set up governance system. We'll look at those components shortly. So what that is saying is that you cannot set up a governance of enterprise I&T for your organization by looking at just few components. Like, for example, you just set up organizational structures for IT, and you think that's all, or you just send people on training and you think that's all, or you just created procedural documents. Okay, so these are the activities that we're running. It's more than that. So COBIT is saying you have to look at the components that COBIT has recommended. For example, start from processes. All right, set up activities recommended by COBIT. From there, move to organizational structure. All right, determine who is accountable, determine who is responsible for those activities we have set up. All right. In COBIT 5, we used to have RACI charts. All right, responsible, accountable, to be consulted and to be informed. Now in COBIT 2019, the CI has been cut off, so it is left for you if you want to implement CI. Okay, but basically for COBIT, okay, is who is responsible, who is accountable. So you have to determine the organizational structure of the organization with respect to the governance or management objective. Then you also have to document the information flow in that organization. Information you need as input, information you need as output. Okay, then you have to also set up policies for the particular objective. Okay, you manage risk, manage continuity, manage problem, manage operations. So whatever objectives we're trying to set up, whatever governance system we are trying to set up, we must look at all the components that COBIT has recommended, set up policies. All right. Look at culture in the organization. Culture, for example, culture, ethics, and behavior. We can have every other thing in place, but culture, the way people behave, we scatter it. That's one area that is always underestimated in many organizations. Culture matters. So COBIT says you should look at culture also. Then, of course, look at the technological environment. Look at your enterprise architecture. All right, that is the part that has to do with your infrastructure, with the applications, with your services that you have set up. So COBIT says, don't just look at process, don't just look at organizational structure, don't just look at competence, right? Look at all those 7 components when you are setting up a governance system. Okay. Then number 3, a governance system should be dynamic. Right. This means that each time one or more of the design factors are changed. All right, we'll look at the design factors as we continue in this training. So design factors are factors you must consider when you want to tailor a governance system for your own particular needs. Okay. Look at the enterprise strategy, look at the enterprise goal, look at the enterprise size, look at the risk profile of the organization, look at the role of IT in that organization. So all those enterprise factors, if any of them changes, all right, your governance system should be adaptable to that change. That is what that principle is talking about. The number 4, a governance system should clearly distinguish between governance and management activities and structure. So governance, like I said in the earlier video, is strategic, while management is focusing more on tactical and operational issues. So we should be able to know where governance starts and stop, where management starts and stop. All right, governance gives direction, all right, and determine the strategy, while management runs with that direction and implements the strategy. The number 5, a governance system should be tailored to the enterprise needs using a set of design factors as parameters to customize and prioritize the governance system components. All right, so you should customize the governance system. That's what they say. So even in the same industry, COBIT is implemented for Bank A. All right, that does not mean it is the same way COBIT will be implemented in Bank B. That is what that is saying. So your COBIT implementation, your governance setup, your governance system must be such that will meet your particular needs as an organization. All right, and number 6, a governance system should cover the enterprise end to end, focusing not only on the IT function, but all technology and information processing the enterprise puts in place to achieve its goals, regardless of where the processing is located in the enterprise. Don't make the mistake of focusing only on your data center. Everywhere there is information, like I said in the first video, everywhere there is information, make sure your governance system covers it. That's what that is saying, end to end. Okay, so those are the 6 principles for a governance system, and you can see them in short form. Number 1, the governance system should provide stakeholder value. The governance system should be implemented using a holistic approach. The governance system should be dynamic governance system. Number 4, a governance should be distinct from management. Number 5, it should be tailored to enterprise needs. Number 6, end-to-end governance system. Those are the 6 principles for governance system. All right. I developed this acronym for you to be able to easily remember the 6 principles for governance system, PHDGTE. If you look at the first letter of each of the principles, providers, P, holistic, H, dynamic, D, governance, J, tailored, C, end-to-end, E. So I came up with this PHDGTE. If you want to make it easier for you to remember, you can call it Get PhD. All right, Get PhD. So it's easy for you. You can't forget Get PhD. Okay, and of course there's no order basically. Okay, even though so basically there's no order. So you can always remember the 6 principles with that Get PhD. All right, then we look at principles for a governance framework. So a governance framework is simply a model from which you can draw inspiration to create your governance system. Okay, so COBIT is an example of a governance framework. And of course, this is not the only governance framework in the world. There are other governance frameworks, right? But what this is saying, what this governance framework, principles for governance framework is saying is that whatever umbrella governance framework we are going to use to build a governance system must have these three attributes. All right. And if you look at the three attributes, the three principles, COBIT has the three. Number one, a governance framework should be based on a conceptual model, identifying the key components and relationships among components to maximize consistency and allow automation. So a governance framework should be based on a model that can be contextualized, a model that can be, customized for an enterprise. That's what that is saying. And if you look at COBIT, it has a core model. Okay, so you have COBIT 5, you have input from industry and from experts. Okay, you have the other standards serving as input. Then you have that being used to create the COBIT governance and management objectives. Then you have the design factors and the focus areas being used to process the COBIT core model so that you can have a customized or tailored governance system. So we have a model in COBIT, okay, a conceptual model in COBIT. Then the governance framework should be open and flexible. It should allow the addition of new content and the ability to address new issues in the most flexible way while maintaining integrity and consistency. Okay, so this is 2022. Suddenly we have a new technology, okay, being launched. Okay, or we change our core business application. Would that invalidate COBIT? Would that invalidate our governance framework? The answer is no. So a good governance framework like COBIT should be able to be flexible, to adapt to changes. All right, for us to be able to use it to adapt to changes in our environment while we are still maintaining integrity and consistency. Remember, it's a framework, it's not a standard. Okay, so while we are interpreting it to adapt to the new environment, we should also be careful to ensure we maintain integrity and consistency so that we don't abuse the interpretation. That is what that is saying. So our environmental changes should be catered for, should have been provided for in the governance framework we are going to adopt. Okay, then number three, the governance framework should align to relevant major related standards, frameworks, and regulations. All right. So what that is saying is that there is no governance framework that can stand alone. Okay, so when you look at COBIT, for example, okay, you see managed risk. That will take your mind to ISO 31000. Okay, you will see managed continuity. That will take your mind to ISO 22301. Okay, you will see managed projects, managed program. You will see managed portfolio. That will take, all those will take your mind to project management body of knowledge. Okay, you will see managed problems. Okay, that's IT. Okay, so you see IT like ISO 20000. Okay, UK corporate governance code, even in the governance domain. So you see all manner of other standards and framework and regulations. Okay, you in COBIT, you see NIST, for example, you see coastal ERM framework. Okay, you see PCI DSS. So a good governance framework should align to relevant major related standards, frameworks, and regulations. So those are the three principles for a governance framework that will be used to build a governance system. For ease of remembrance, I've picked acronym BOA. All right, B based on conceptual model, O for open and flexible, then A for aligned to relevant major related standards, frameworks, and regulations. Those are the two principles we have in COBIT. Very important, very, very important. Okay, so let's look at components of the governance system. Now, the components are also very, very examinable in COBIT Foundation. So when we have looked at the design factors, and through the design factors and the focus areas, we have been able to determine the governance and the management objectives that are relevant for our particular organization. They will have to use the components of the governance system to implement COBIT for those objectives. So components are factors that individually and collectively contribute to the good operations of the enterprise governance system over information and technology. Components interact with each other, resulting in a holistic governance systems for information and technology. Okay, so the components are actually 7. Okay, so you have processes, right? Processes describe an organized set of practices and activities to achieve certain objectives and produce a set of outputs that support achievement of overall IT-related goals. Remember, I said processes can be broken down to management practices. Management practices can be broken down to activities. So in a nutshell, processes are actually recommended activities, right? To the nitty-gritty of it, processes are activities that COBIT has recommended for each of the objectives. Okay, so if you look at the COBIT production, the COBIT manner on governance and management objective, you will see for each objective, each of the 40 objectives, COBIT has recommended activities for the implementers to set up for the client organization. Then it is not enough for you to set up activities, all right, without assigning accountability and responsibility. So that will now take us to the organizational structure. So COBIT has also recommended offices, roles that should be responsible and that should be accountable for those activities or management practices you have set up under processes. Remember I said in COBIT 2019, we don't have C and I, consulted and informed. No. If you want to set that up for your own organization based on the design factor, fine, is allowed. Okay? Remember we said the governance framework should be open and flexible, so it's allowed. But really, strictly, COBIT has key decision-making entities of just responsible, who is responsible, who is accountable. Okay, so having set up the roles of decision makers, the people who are responsible, people who are accountable under the national structure, COBIT says you should also set up principles, policies, and frameworks for the client or for the organization. So principles, policies, and framework translate desired behavior into practical guidance for day-to-day management. So if you really want what you desire to be operational in the organization, there must be a policy document. You know, my people used to say, where there is no law, there is no sin. So if you want people to conform to certain behavioral pattern in an organization, you must have set up policies. And good luck again to us, COBIT recommended policies for each of the 40 objectives. Then that takes us to the information flow. Information is pervasive throughout any organization and includes all information produced and used by the enterprise. So for each of the governance and management objectives, COBIT actually recommended information that you need as input. Also recommended information that you need as output. So you need to be able to run each of the 40 objectives successfully. Is that not wonderful? Okay, then cultural ethics and behavior, right, of individuals and of the enterprise are often underestimated as factors in the success of governance and management activities. Every organization has its culture. You may not realize it, right? After like 3, 4, 5 months, you just conform consciously or unconsciously. And that could be an opportunity for best practice, or it could be a barrier to best practice, depending on what you have in that organization. So what this component is saying is that when you are setting up, when you are implementing COBIT, review the culture, the ethics and behavior in that organization to see whether it is an opportunity, it presents an opportunity, or if it presents a risk to the objectives of the implementation, so that we'll now be able to know what to do, or whether to encourage, to reinforce the behavior or to discourage the behavior. Then people skills and competencies are required for good decisions, execution of corrective action, and successful completion of all activities. So let us do with managed continuity. Okay, good thing again for us, COBIT recommended skills for each of the objectives, right? Every objective you pick in COBIT, right? I will show you that in subsequent videos. Every objective you pick, there are recommended skills. Okay, for example, now we want to pick a managed continuity. So we start looking at skills that are very relevant for survival, for sustenance of the organization. Okay, for example, BI, you need to have people that are trained, are competent in doing business impact analysis. Okay, you need people that that should be able to manage an alternate site. For example, you may need people that are skilled in cloud technology. Okay, if that is what you have used for your disaster recovery. So all that, so you need to be able to identify, all right, people skills and competencies required for the COBIT implementation. Okay, the last one is services, infrastructure, and application. I call it SIA, services, infrastructure, and applications. So this includes infrastructure, technology, and applications that provide the enterprise with the governance system for INT processing. So for each of the objectives, you need to, COBIT also recommended technologies that you might need. So for the successful implementation of each of the objectives, you need to determine what you need to add or improve in your enterprise architecture. Okay, I talk about managed continuity. For example, managed continuity, part of the technologies we may require may be server clustering, the server clustering technology, to ensure that our application, the application is always up. Okay, so that is just an example. Okay, managed problems. We may need a KEDB, non-error database, okay, as part of our SIA. Okay, so for each objective, the implementer, the COBIT implementer, or the governance system implementer should be able to recommend technologies, services, infrastructure, applications that will help to actually ensure that those governance and management objectives are successfully implemented. So these are the 7 components of the governance system, very important in COBIT: processes, organizational structures, principal policies and frameworks, information, cultural ethics and behavior, people skills and competencies, services, infrastructure, and applications. Okay, so at a glance, these are the 7. Okay, rounding up now on focus area. So focus area is describe a certain governance topic, domain, or issue that can be addressed by a collection of governance and management objectives and their components. So now I can call it areas of specialization. Okay, so we want to be able to adapt COBIT for the telecommunication industry. We want to be able to adapt COBIT for small and medium enterprises. We want to adapt COBIT for cybersecurity. We want to adapt COBIT for digital transformation. We want to adapt COBIT for cloud computing. We want to adapt COBIT for privacy. We want to adapt COBIT for DevOps. We want to adapt COBIT for risk management. We want to adapt COBIT for assurance providers, for audits. Okay, like I love to say, COBIT is, is what you say it is. The usage is virtually unlimited. The number of focus areas is virtually unlimited. So a lot of work is still going on these focus areas where we can have COBIT for its particular sector, COBIT for a particular industry, COBIT for a particular area of governance. So this is it for this section in the COBIT Foundation training. If you have not subscribed to this channel, try and do so now. I will still be posting more videos on COBIT in a short while. Thank you.